Thank you very much, Program Director, fellow panelists, participants in this conference.
This conference is taking place against the background of profound ongoing structural changes in the world economy. The past few decades have seen the rise of emerging economies as new sources of global economic growth and of trade and investment flows that are redefining the global economic geography. These global changes have been accompanied by significant improvements in Africa's economic and development prospects. Africa is already the second fastest growing continent in the world after Asia and offers some of the highest returns on investment in any region. Growth in Africa has been driven by a boom in minerals, in agriculture, transport, telecommunications, and retail sectors. Africa's enormous reserves of raw materials, 60% of the world's unused arable land, a young and growing population, a growing middle class with considerable and growing purchasing power, and urbanization alongside steady improvements in economic governance are all factors which could see Africa becoming the next leading source of global economic growth. However, Africa's full economic potential will remain unfulfilled unless we address challenges of inadequate infrastructure, limitations imposed by small and fragmented markets, and inadequate diversification of industrial structures, all of which are responsible for the low levels of intra-African trade. South Africa is championing an ambitious integration and development agenda throughout the African continent. In particular, we are seeking to advance what we call development integration in the Southern African Customs Union, the Southern African Development Community, and the recently launched tripartite initiative to integrate SADC, the East African Community, and the Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa, COMESA. By development integration, we mean an approach that combines market integration, cross-border infrastructure development through spatial development initiatives, among others, and policy coordination to advance regional industrial value chains. We have pursued this agenda with a good degree of success within SACU and in the SADC contexts, and it underpins the approach we have taken within the SADC East African Community COMESA tripartite initiative. SACU remains the anchor for wider integration within Southern Africa. South Africa is working with Botswana, Lesotho, Namibia, and Swaziland to implement the SACU 5-point work program, which focuses on 1, promoting regional industrialization through establishment of cross-border value chains, 2, reviewing the revenue sharing formula to more directly support infrastructure development and industrialization, 3, advancing trade facilitation initiatives among member states, 4, developing common SACU institutions, and 5, promoting unified engagement in trade negotiations with third parties. On industrial policy front, SACU partners have identified 8 sectors to build cross-border value chains, with agro-processing as the pilot project. Market integration is well advanced in SADC. The SADC FTA should be fully implemented this year, with almost all tariff lines traded duty-free. The product lines traded at 0% currently stand at 92% against the baseline of 85% in 2008. In line with our development integration approach, South Africa will continue to prioritize the consolidation of the SADC FTA, working with member states to implement their obligations and focusing on sectoral cooperation, promoting regional productive capacity and infrastructure, addressing non-tariff barriers, and simplifying rules of origin, harmonizing standards, and advancing the work on trade facilitation. As noted in 2009, member states of SADC, the East African Community, and COMESA initiated a wide-ranging initiative for integration that will be built on market integration, industrial development, and infrastructure. These 3 pillars will be pursued concurrently in order to ensure an equitable spread of the benefits of regional integration. Negotiations have commenced in the market access pillar, which in the first stage will cover trading goods. The summit that launched the tripartite FTA proposed a deadline of April 2014 for the conclusion of the trade negotiations, with implementation of the tripartite FTA scheduled for 2015. This ambitious deadline provides the impetus for us to work expeditiously on the trade integration pillar to which we are all committed. Once established, the tripartite FTA will combine the markets of 26 countries with a population of around 600 million people and a combined GDP of $1 trillion US, providing the market scale that could launch a sizable part of the continent onto a new development trajectory. Importantly, the tripartite FTA will form the basis of an Africa-wide FTA, which is expected to create a market with a combined GDP of $2.6 trillion US. The continental FTA will address the challenge of small and fragmented economies in Africa. A larger, more integrated and growing market would enhance the interests of foreign investors in Africa and provide an important underpinning for continuing to enhance intra-regional trade. You will notice that trade facilitation features prominently in our work on integration across the continent at all of the levels I've mentioned, SACU, within SADC, and on the tripartite basis. Broadly speaking, trade facilitation work would fall under the infrastructure pillar, but some of the rulemaking in this area could also be part of FTA negotiation outcomes, notably in respect of rules related to certificates of rules of origin and customs administration and cooperation. Trade facilitation can be construed broadly as interventions that include and provide hard and soft infrastructure to facilitate the movement of goods, of services, and of peoples across borders. The work being undertaken on the North-South corridor to upgrade road and rail infrastructure can certainly contribute to facilitating trade in the region. The establishment of one-stop border posts, which would involve the development of hard infrastructure, along with measures to improve efficiencies regarding customs procedures, customs documentation, and other documentation, can also help to reduce the transaction costs associated with cross-border trade, which are particularly high in Africa and in our region. Let me say that we are very well aware, as the Department of Trade and Industry, that many of the major concerns which are raised by our own traders and exporters on the African continent are often related to matters of this nature. In SACU, the work on trade facilitation is being led by our respective customs authorities, the South African Revenue Services in the case of South Africa. This work, extensive and technically complex, has focused on building ICT connectivity among the SACU member states, as well as on strengthening risk management and enforcement measures. I'm pleased to note that SACU members have drawn on the considerable experience and expertise that resides in the World Customs Organization on a range of trade facilitation matters. I'm informed that the World Customs Organization has supported our work on national customs to business stakeholder forums, implementation of national preferred trade programs, as well as ongoing work on risk management techniques and joint enforcement activities. SARS has been deeply involved and at the forefront of work in the region to ease cross-border trade. SARS has considered the viability of the so-called single window option as a possible technological support for measures to facilitate regional trade, but considers that this would fall outside of the scope of its current approach and priorities in the region. Let me conclude with a brief word on South Africa's approach to trade facilitation negotiations in the World Trade Organization. One would be forgiven for thinking that trade facilitation would be a non-controversial issue in the Doha round negotiations. This, however, has not proved to be the case, and this arises in two main respects. First, the Doha mandate for trade facilitation envisaged that as legal commitments in this area could impose onerous obligations on countries to upgrade their soft and hard infrastructure as regards customs administration, developing countries would undertake such commitments only if adequate technical and financial support was provided. The difficulty the membership now encounters is that while the legal commitments would be binding, it is difficult to obtain binding commitments on the necessary support to bring this about. This issue lies at the core of the disagreements in the negotiations within the WTO on trade facilitation. The second issue concerns the broader state of the negotiations. Many members are hesitant to conclude an agreement on trade facilitation outside of agreement on what is often seen as other more pressing issues on the agenda, such as reform in agricultural trade, for example. These members are concerned about an approach to negotiations which amount to cherry-picking issues of interest to some, but not including also in issues which are of interest to others. Together, both of these issues at this point have effectively stalled the negotiations on trade facilitation within the WTO. Let me then say, by way of conclusion, that South Africa sees matters of trade facilitation as extremely important. As the DTI in particular, we are open to proposals to improve trade facilitation, particularly trade facilitation measures that could enhance and improve our efforts to promote integration on the African continent. I'm sure that we're going to receive some very interesting and important ideas and proposals at this conference, and I look forward to the opportunity to engage with those as we move ahead, and we wish this conference all the best. Thank you very much.